Brothers and sisters, families and friends, forgive the hell. I'm trying to do my curly thing right now. I figure I'll stop picking it out, throwing it out, and let my natural, you know, I don't know, texture of hair do its thing. I have so much on my mind at the moment. A lot of things bombarding me from different directions, and I don't know. I really can't distinguish between what's me and what's God impressing upon me. I would say that the things that are directly attached to the Word of God, I know those things are from God. His word is His word, and when it's pertaining to His word, and you know that it's pertaining to Him. But there are a lot of other things, so I'm going to try to filter these things as I'm talking. But I want to take the opportunity now while I'm up, I'm about ready to shut it down. Um, One of the main things, and I want to get this out, perhaps if I get this out, it'll give me room and clarity about the other things. When I was in prison, and Sister Dot, you got to forgive me for not putting the shirt on. I'm so comfortable right now. So very comfortable. But I participated in a class called Quest. I was a facilitator. The class was sponsored by a man by the name of Bartholomew Riley, and he does not like the name Bartholomew. He just like to go by the name of Mike. Mike Riley. He was a retired Air Forceman, and he, being that he was a free world person and he was willing to sponsor the program, that made it possible for us to have the program. A lot of times, if no DOC officer or employee or somebody contracted by DOC was willing to put the classes together, you wouldn't have classes. But when you had free world people willing to volunteer and put in their own time and resources to make the class possible, then you had the class. Such was the case with Quest. He came in, he made his bodily presence, and because he was present, we were able to hold the class. He didn't teach the class, he was just present. He gave a testimonial at certain junctures of the class about his own background, especially when it came down to drug addiction and alcoholism, because he had a point in his life where that was his struggle. So that gave him space to give his contribution. When I was in the class facilitating, we had two kinds of classes. So we had a group, which was the large group, in which case everybody got in a big circle, and the class was ran by a facilitator whose responsibility it was to cover all the material for that session or for those sessions in that particular area of the book. And then you had table discussions or table groups, in which case I and a co-facilitator would be responsible over probably about 8 participants, give or take, because a lot of times when you're in prison, you start a class of 30, 40, 50, and that class steadily dwindles because people transfer, people go to confinement, or people just decide, you know what, I don't want to be a part of this class, and they opt out. That's their prerogative. But there was a section in the Quest manual called Parenting While in Prison. Excuse me. And I was tasked a couple of times to cover that area, mostly because I was actively trying and engaged in parenting while I was in prison. And the majority of the facilitators, their children were either grown or they weren't having much success in connecting with their children or parenting because of a lack of a relationship with the mother of the children or whoever was the guardian of the children at that time. So I was tasked with that. I was actively involved at that time trying to parent, and not necessarily parent, but just be involved in the life of my child. My child being my son, Tyree. I love you, son. I love you. I'm proud of you. I look forward to building with you, man, making this thing real and making it happen out here in the free world. I made it, man. I made it. That said, one of the challenging things about parenting in prison. This is one of the things I had to cover, and it didn't necessarily apply to my situation because my parenting was independent of the other parent, which is Tyree's mother. We kind of like closed doors on communication, but I was fortunate by the grace of God to have another open door of communication, and that was through his grandparents, who were very adamant about making sure that line of communication was upheld, and I had a continuous opportunity to access the heart and the mind of my son through phone calls, and he could just talk to me and tell me about what was going on in his life. 50-minute phone calls once a week. So much to try to fit into 15 minutes. I would say that probably was the greatest challenge. I only have 15 minutes per week. This was the allotted time I'm not saying that was the only time I could call, the only opportunity, because I could call Pastor Nobles and talk to them throughout the week, but this was the time that was reserved so that his mother could get him over to his grandmother's house at this particular time, this window of opportunity that I had in prison, because in prison you deal with windows of opportunity. You got count time, you got shakedown time, you got lockdown, you got all these various little things that take place that put a clamp on your opportunities to do what you do and make things happen. In this case, I chose Sunday because it was the weekend and I knew exactly what was going to take place on Sunday. The likelihood of a shakedown was minimal because of the weekend. The only thing they really had going on was chapel services, and most of the guys who worked Monday through Friday. They had the weekends off. You had a select few who still worked on the weekends, like food service. You got to feed the guys on the compound and maybe some medical staff, but classification was shut down, so the classification order didn't have to work. In spots like RMC, which is Reception and Medical Center, Lake Butler, Florida, those guys worked Sunday through Saturday. I know because I was there. But Sunday was an opportune time for me to connect with my son. And that was the main reason why I didn't attend chapel that much on Sundays during probably about 7 to 10 years, is because that was my time to talk to my son. Okay. And I believe that God understood. I wasn't robbing God, because there's no particular day that has a monopoly on how I can approach God and worship God and fellowship God. Take note, Christians, all y'all Sunday stuckers. I just made that word up, stuckers. That means that you're stuck on something. Okay. So Sunday at a certain time, there was an opportunity for me to call, and my son would be present at his grandparents' house, and we would talk about whatever. And this was like over a long span of time. So he would be little, and then all of a sudden he would be big, and then at some point he became non-existent because he was a man. He was doing grown man things, and the older that he got, the less opportunities that I got to talk with him. But I was able to, by the grace of God, and I say by the grace of God because I did not have an absolute understanding of what it meant to be a father in prison, communicating with his son those things that a father must communicate in order to enrich the life of his son. A lot of times I was operating in the blind because 15 minutes does not give you enough to go by to gauge where my child is, what my child needs, and how I can best impart to him through simple phone call something that will help him navigate, or help her navigate if you have a daughter, the challenges of life, the challenges of adolescence, the challenges of puberty, the challenges of transition from young adult to, where you go from young adult to old adult, middle-aged adult. I don't know how to say that. Anyways, If anything that I lacked in my ability to help my son navigate those seasons of his life through a 15-minute phone call, there was one thing that I was determined to do, because I knew that based upon my own experience, this was a very intrinsic and essential thing that must be imparted even when you can't impart anything else. If your money is low, so you can't be of financial support, if your body is failing you, so you can't throw the football and you can't run and rip and play hide and seek because your body won't allow you to do so, and perhaps even maybe your intelligence is not as high as it ought to be, so you can't do homework or reiterate or re-emphasize or even reinforce the things that the teacher taught them in class, they can come home and have you do the same. But if you can do this, and you can do it in such a way so as to persuade them that it is real and so nurture their soul, this is what I always wanted to do. I wanted my son to know that I loved him, that my heart and my mind, the entirety of my inner self, was geared towards desiring the best for him, wishing the best for him, and hoping that I will be in a position to bring about or assist him in having the best for him. I love you, son. Sometimes it's all I could do. I mean, it wasn't much. I hated talking about prison because, I mean, what am I going to reiterate or regurgitate a bunch of trash? Nothing going on in prison. I might be involved in some positive things, but the positive things that I am involved in don't negate the negative environment in which I am trying to do positive things. And then again, the 15-minute phone calls. The 15-minute phone calls. Oh, man. So much to say. So much that I had in my mind. And then sometimes it wasn't even a matter about what I could say or what I could counsel or the fatherly advice that I could give. It was just a matter of let him talk. What's going on with you, man? Yeah. Oh, man, that's awesome, man. Yeah, tell me some more. For real? Oh, man, that's crazy. Yeah. And then the crazy thing, they go started getting girlfriends and things of that nature. That made for very interesting conversations. And there were some points in his life where I knew that he was facing the challenges that all young men face. And there was nothing I could do. I mean, young men have to face these things. They have to experience the failures, the setbacks, the pain, the hurt, and all the humiliation that accompanies navigating manhood at a young age. And there were long seasons in which I could not talk to him. And I really believe that I could not talk to him because he was at a point where he was not ready to talk to me. He was not ready to face me as a man. Not saying that he was less of a man, but he was in a space where he was trying to figure it out. And he didn't want to give off to his father that he didn't know what the hell he was doing. But I trusted God in those seasons. I prayed for my son in those seasons. And that was me loving him when I could not communicate to him in a measly ass 15-minute phone call what my heart was for him. And he made it through. He navigated, he learned, he adjusted. As a result, he has 4 beautiful grandbabies. 3 girls. Oh, man. Whew. 3 girls. Ladies, don't take that the wrong way. Don't take that the wrong way. Please don't take it the wrong way. They are the most beautiful little babies. Twins. And then my favorite, my little princess, she is a very highly intelligent, imaginative little girl. And she puts me to work every time she comes my way. Papa. Yeah, Papa is equated with play when it comes to her. I equal excitement, and I better perform. If I don't, oh man, there's hell to pay. Uh, then there's a little boy who I love him dearly. Won't see him much because he's with his mother this summer. But yeah, I look forward to spending time with my grandson as well. So 3 girls, 1 boy from my man child. And he turned out all right. He turned out all right. I'm not disappointed in the least, son. I'm proud of you. Uh, like any of us, we still have room to grow. We still are not where we ought to be, but God is pleased when we are moving in that direction. And I believe you're moving in that direction. Okay. So, parenting while in prison. I said all that to say this. It was my task to speak to men based on my own experience, the challenges and some of the secrets, some of the nuggets on being a successful parent while incarcerated. If you have a line of communication, whatever it is, if it's just a letter, if it's just a phone call, if it's a relationship that you have to keep going. And what I mean by that, not the lovey-dove stuff. I gotta stay in love with you and I gotta just cater to you and we know that this thing really is not working. But it's just being cordial, being respectful, being understanding to the mother of the children so that you can maintain the relationship with the one who is going to give you access to the children. If you burn those bridges, and I'm speaking to men in prison, you cut off your opportunity to be an influence. And I mean that in the, let me change the word, not influence, to be a presence in the life of your children. If you burn bridges, you cut off your own access, and you want to have access to the little ones that you love. And if you can, by the grace of God, if you can enlarge on that access, if you can broaden the opportunities, if you can more deeply entrench yourself in the relationship dynamic that would allow you full access to your children, then by all means, do so. Because your sons and your daughters, they need you. Despite what you cannot give in the moment. I spent 25 years and 9 months incarcerated. And I spent every one of those years and all those measly months desiring to have a deep relationship with my son. Why? Naturally, as a father, I love my son. But most importantly, I wanted to see my son successful. One thing I did not want to see, and I saw it many times in prison, I did not want to see my son come meet me while I was still in prison. I didn't want to wake up in the morning, step out of my cell, and catch my son's glance as he stepped out of his cell, because he did something that any father worth being a father would advise his son not to do and instruct him on how to avoid such bad life choices. Unfortunately, you see a lot of that in prison. I've seen it. I've seen father and son play on the same flag football team, work out together. I've seen one father who was so deeply indulged in the boy game, and by boy game, that's terminology for men preying on other men, engaging in homosexuality in prison. Son comes to prison, all he has to give his son is prison life. So he teaches his son the game. And the game that he teaches his son is the worst kind of game that you can teach your son if you ever find yourself incarcerated with your own child. You see what I'm saying? I wanted to keep my son out of prison. And I wanted my son to enjoy life as a free man in the absence of his father. That's why when his mother decided to get married and my son began to comprehend the reality of having a stepfather, wasn't no issue. Didn't try to insinuate any kind of conflict or confusion in that. That's a family dynamic, and I want you to respect that, son. So long as that man respects you and he's willing to take up the responsibility as being a father figure in your life, by all means do so. Why? Because it's enriching to your soul. But don't forget, I'm your daddy and I love you. And if I could, I would. And so long as my son understood that and believed that, it made a difference. Maybe at some seasons and some junctures, not so much so. And I can understand why. Because sometimes you got to have the proof in the pudding. Sometimes the words sometimes the words aren't enough. Sometimes you just got to have the actions. I need the action. The tears in my eyes tell you I'm desperate for the action. And that's when I just had to pray for God's grace to fill in the blanks, to do for me on my behalf what I could not do. And he did that. Never a day did my son forget that I was his father, that I loved him, and that I look forward to the day when I would be free and we could be together. And I count myself fortunate. My son comes to see me. I'm still in the transition house, and I don't have the means with which to move around as I would like. But he gets in that little raggedy PT Cruiser, and he rolls my way, and he hangs out with me, and he hangs out with the fellas in here that share the space with me. He comes to spend time with his father, just as I always dreamed of coming to spend time with him. So he's still compensating for my lack, but we are in a better space, in a more advantageous space than we've ever been. And that's because I'm free by the grace of God. Parenting while in prison. Ladies, I'm very not reluctant, not necessarily cautious. I don't want to advise you on what to do because I don't know the dynamic of your relationship. I don't know the caliber of man who is the father of your children. I understand that there are a lot of men in prison who are well and truly, deeply, without question, irrevocably pieces of shit. I've lived with them. No good as fathers, no good as husbands, no good as men, period. They got a long way to go to get to that point where they can really call themselves men in the truest sense of the word. And so they should not have access to their children because they can't do anything for the mind, body, and soul. There ought to be a barricade between them and the children for the safety of the children. And if you are not giving these men access, I understand. But if you have a man who you know is navigating his incarceration, trying to be a better man, adjusting, he is repentant, sorry for the things that he has done, has confessed and articulated the fact that he knows that he was wrong and he's seeking to make those adjustments in his life. He needs your help. because he can't access the children without going through you, or in my son's case, without going through the grandparents. Whoever has responsibility over the children, they are the ones who open the door. They are the ones who help repair the breach. They are the ones who provide some of the material to rebuild the bridge. Your children, at some point, are going to ask questions. Not because they've read books or they're well studied or they got some particular insight out of the atmosphere, but simply because when they go to school and when they watch TV, they are going to observe certain family dynamics. They are going to see a mother, they are going to see a father, and the mother and the father and the children are going to be sitting at a table together, or they're going to be getting out of the car together, or they're going to be doing things together, and the child is going to wonder, why am I missing an element? That's observation. And there's the intrinsic desire, what God put in a child to comprehend the need for a mother and the need for a father, the need for feminine nurture and the need for masculine nurture, the need for feminine guidance and the need for masculine guidance, and how these things combine make the totality of nurture that a child is entitled to. But we have unfortunate circumstances: incarceration, woman, mother, wife, girlfriend, baby mama, whatever your title and designation is, be so gracious as to give him the opportunity to communicate with his children. Now, if he fucks up, if he's not the caliber of man that he should be, or he's communicating things that are poisonous to the children, by all means, shut it down. But if he's communicating good things, if you see that the children are enjoying having this contact or this communication, if it's bringing clarity to their lives and nurture to their souls, don't be spiteful. Don't be bitter. Don't be nasty. Don't be a bitch. Give the man a chance to be a part of his children's life, especially if he's doing everything on his part that he possibly can do to be that part. There was so much more that I had to cover in parenting while in prison. But one of the most important things and the most challenging things that the men faced was maintaining those lines of communication and dealing with the other parent. Because sometimes that can be a great challenge. Sometimes it was an impossible thing. The very mother of the children was standing in the way. Don't stand in the way, ladies. If you got a good man trying to get past you to the babies that he loves. Okay. So much more to be said, but I'm going to leave it like that. Tyree, I love you. I'm so grateful that throughout all the years of my incarceration, I was able to get a glimpse of where you were in those seasons. I have the pictures to prove it. Very few letters, but some of the letters that I have are very humorous. You need to tighten up on your spelling and your punctuation and grammar, son, but that's all right. Talking with you over the years was by far my utmost pleasure. I approached every opportunity to make the calls with great anticipation. I look forward to it. You can ask Q. I shut everything down when my time came. And there were many times where I called, but for whatever reason, your mother or whoever was responsible for that day couldn't get you at the rendezvous point on time, or sometimes due to things that were beyond my power, compound movements, I was unable to meet you at the rendezvous point. But each time I missed that opportunity, it hurt. And it hurt especially so when the opportunity was on my when the failure to meet up was on my end. I was frustrated to no end, but it was a blessing. I'm glad that you made it this far, that you are a law-abiding citizen, that you are a working man, and that you have a vested, deep, sincere interest in the well-being of your own children. I commend you for the sacrifices that you make, for waking up when you wake up and working when you work, to the point that you work and shut it down for the day. Anytime you want to come chill with your pops, you're welcome. Just make sure, as much as is possible, depending on the baby mama, bring my babies with you. Good job, son. Good mother job.